What if the very thing that makes you so incredible at loving, that deep, almost psychic empathy of yours, is also the thing that leaves you heartbroken and totally drained? As an INFJ female, you have a gift for connection. You don't just listen, you absorb. You don't just care, you carry the emotional weight of everyone you love. But in a world that often mistakes kindness for weakness, this gift can feel more like a curse, leaving you wide open to manipulation and burnout. We're heading into 2026, and the energy of this year is all about profound personal awakening, especially for empaths like us. This isn't just another year. This is the year you stop being an emotional sponge and start becoming a sovereign empath. What if you could build an unbreakable shield of self-respect that finally protects your heart without closing it off? In this video, I'm going to show you 9 ancient Stoic habits, totally reimagined for the INFJ female, that will help you do exactly that. This isn't about becoming cold or distant, it's about becoming unshakable. And if you already click this video, you might be, and INFJ female, this video will confirm it. So let's begin. The first habit: practice emotional control to avoid manipulation. Alright, the first and most foundational habit is learning to practice emotional control. For an INFJ, this isn't about stuffing your feelings down or pretending you don't feel deeply. You do, and that's your strength. The real skill is learning how to manage your reactions so your emotions don't end up controlling you. You know that moment when you walk into a room and instantly feel something is off, even before anyone says a word? Or when someone you love is irritated or distant, and suddenly your whole mood shifts with theirs. That's your empathy at work, but without control, it turns into emotional absorption. And that's exactly where manipulation can quietly slip in. Manipulators don't always look obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, a disappointed tone that makes you feel guilty. A passive-aggressive comment that keeps you second-guessing yourself. Or those small tests to see how much you'll tolerate. They feed off your reactions. The more reactive you are, the more influence they gain over your emotional state. That's why emotional control is not just helpful, it's protective. The Stoic approach teaches you to step back and observe rather than immediately react. When you feel that sudden wave of anxiety, guilt, or pressure, don't rush to fix it or take responsibility for it. Pause for a moment. Take a breath. Create a small space between what you feel and how you respond. In that space, ask yourself honestly, is this emotion actually mine? Or did I just pick it up from someone else? That single question can change everything. When you choose not to react impulsively, you take your power back. You stop feeding into emotional chaos and start grounding yourself in calm. This calm isn't weakness or indifference. It's quiet strength. It shows that you're not easily shaken or controlled. Over time, people notice this. Those who rely on emotional manipulation will lose interest because they can't get the same response from you anymore. And the right people, the ones who value stability and respect, will feel drawn to your presence. By holding on to your inner peace, you're setting a clear standard without even saying much. You're showing that your emotions are yours to manage, not something others can play with. That kind of self-control creates a steady, grounded energy around you. And for an INFJ, that's how you protect your heart without losing your depth. The second habit: cultivate self-respect through daily reflection. Habit number 2 is all about cultivating self-respect with a daily reflection ritual. This isn't about vanity or telling yourself empty affirmations just to feel better for a moment. It's about real validation, the kind that comes from knowing you showed up in alignment with who you truly are. For an INFJ, this is especially powerful because there's a natural tendency to look outward for approval. You notice people's reactions, their tone, their energy, and before you know it, your sense of worth starts depending on how others respond to you. This practice breaks that pattern at its root. The Stoics didn't journal just to record what happened in their day. They used reflection as a tool to sharpen their character and stay grounded in their values. That's the mindset you're stepping into. So here's your simple practice for 2026. Set aside 5 quiet minutes, either in the morning before the world gets loud or at night when everything slows down. You can stand in front of a mirror or sit with a notebook. Then ask yourself honestly, did my actions today reflect the kind of person I want to be? Did I stay true to my values, even in small moments? You don't need a perfect day to feel proud. Even one small action counts. Maybe you spoke honestly when it felt uncomfortable. Maybe you respected your own boundary instead of overextending yourself. Maybe you chose peace instead of reacting emotionally. Write that one thing down or acknowledge it out loud. That's how you start building self-trust. INFJs often struggle with feeling confident unless someone else points out their worth. A compliment can lift you up, but the absence of it can quietly pull you down. This habit changes that dynamic completely. Instead of waiting to be seen, you begin seeing yourself. Instead of needing external approval, you start creating your own. Over time, this daily reflection becomes a steady foundation. Other people's opinions don't disappear, but they lose their power over you. They become information, not judgment. You can take what's useful and leave the rest without questioning your value. As this builds, something shifts in how you carry yourself. You stop tolerating disrespect because it no longer matches the standard you've set internally. You walk into each day already grounded in your worth, not searching for it. And that quiet confidence, the kind that comes from within, is what truly protects your heart. The third habit: set clear boundaries like a compassionate gate. For an INFJ, I know the word boundary can feel uncomfortable, almost like you're doing something wrong. Saying no might feel like you're letting someone down or being selfish. You might even worry that people will see you differently or pull away from you. But this is exactly the mindset that needs to shift in 2026. Habit number 3 is learning to set clear boundaries, not as a wall that blocks people out, but as a compassionate gate that you control. You decide what comes in, what stays, and what needs to stop. A boundary isn't something you use against others. It's something you create for yourself. It's a form of self-respect in action. When you don't have boundaries, your energy becomes available to everyone at any time, and over time, that leads to exhaustion, resentment, and even emotional burnout. You start giving from a place of pressure instead of genuine care. That's why boundaries are not optional for you. They're necessary. Start by paying attention to the moments when you feel drained, overwhelmed, or quietly frustrated. Those feelings are signals. Maybe it's the friend who always calls late at night to unload their problems. Maybe it's the person who never asks how you're doing, but expects you to always listen. These patterns don't fix themselves unless you step in and define your limits. Once you notice a pattern, turn it into a simple, clear rule. Keep it realistic and specific. For example, you might decide that you don't engage in heavy conversations after a certain time, or that you won't respond to messages immediately when you need space. These are not punishments for others. They are acts of care for yourself. The next step is communicating these boundaries. This is where many INFJs struggle, because you want to soften it, explain it, or apologize for it. But clarity is kindness. You can be gentle without being unclear. A simple statement like, "I need this time to recharge so I can show up fully," is enough. You don't need to over-explain or seek approval. When you start doing this consistently, something powerful happens. The right people adjust and respect your limits. The ones who don't may resist, but that resistance tells you everything you need to know. You're not pushing people away. You're creating space for healthier connections. This is how you protect your energy while still keeping your heart open, making sure your love is given freely, not out of obligation. If this is hitting home for you, take a second to like the video. It really helps the channel reach more people like us. The fourth habit: embrace honesty as your core integrity. INFJs have a natural instinct to keep the peace. You can sense tension before it even becomes visible, and your first reaction is often to smooth things over, to adjust yourself so everything feels calm again. On the surface, that looks like kindness. But over time, constantly avoiding conflict can create something much heavier beneath it. Unspoken feelings, quiet resentment, and confusion start to build. And in that silence, manipulation can quietly take root. That's why the fourth Stoic habit is to embrace honesty as a core part of your integrity. Not harsh honesty, not saying whatever comes to mind without care, but something deeper and more balanced. Compassionate honesty. This means telling the truth in a way that respects both your feelings and the other person's, without shrinking yourself to make things easier. When something feels off, don't ignore it just to keep things comfortable. That uncomfortable feeling is often your intuition trying to get your attention. If a promise is broken, address it instead of brushing it aside. If someone's behavior makes you feel undervalued, speak up about it instead of silently adjusting. These moments might seem small, but they matter. Every time you stay silent, you teach others that your feelings are optional. Manipulators, whether intentional or not, rely on that silence. They thrive in situations where expectations are unclear and emotions go unspoken. It gives them room to twist things, to deny or to shift responsibility back onto you. But when you speak clearly and calmly, that space disappears. You bring everything into the open, where it can be seen and understood for what it really is. The key here is your tone and intention. You're not attacking or blaming, you're simply stating your experience. For example, instead of saying, "You never care about me," you might say, "I felt hurt when that promise wasn't kept." It's direct, but it's also grounded and respectful. At first, this might feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to avoiding these conversations. But with practice, it becomes easier. And more importantly, it changes the kind of relationships you build. People who value honesty will meet you with the same openness. They'll respect your willingness to be real. Those who don't may pull away, but that's not a loss, it's clarity. A relationship built on honest communication doesn't need guessing or overthinking. It creates trust, because both people know where they stand. There's no performance, no hidden tension, no emotional games, just two people choosing to show up truthfully. And in that kind of space, manipulation simply has no place to exist. The fifth habit: prioritize solitude for inner strength. Your intuition is your superpower. It's that quiet inner voice that picks up on things others miss, the subtle shift in someone's tone, the feeling that something isn't quite right, even when everything looks fine on the surface. For an INFJ, this inner guidance is incredibly accurate, but only when you can actually hear it. The problem is, your mind is often filled with the emotions, expectations, and needs of everyone around you. Over time, that constant input creates noise, and your own voice gets pushed to the background. That's why the fifth habit is to prioritize solitude, not as a luxury, but as something essential for your emotional and mental balance. This is not about isolating yourself or avoiding people. It's about creating space where you can reconnect with who you are underneath all the external influence. Without that space, it becomes very easy to lose your sense of direction and start living in response to others instead of in alignment with yourself. Start by intentionally scheduling time for yourself. It doesn't have to be long, even 20 minutes can make a difference. The key is consistency and protection of that time. Early mornings can work well, before messages, responsibilities, and conversations begin. Or you might prefer evenings, when everything quiets down. Treat this time as non-negotiable, the same way you would an important commitment. Because it is one. During this time, keep things simple. Sit in silence, go for a walk, write your thoughts down, or just breathe without distraction. You don't need to be productive. The goal is to let your mind settle so your own thoughts can surface naturally. This is where clarity begins. You start to notice what you actually feel, what you actually want, and what no longer sits right with you. When you're constantly immersed in someone else's emotional world, especially in a close relationship, it's easy to lose that clarity. You begin to adapt, adjust, and accommodate without even realizing it. Over time, this creates a quiet disconnection from yourself. Solitude brings you back. It grounds you again. This habit also protects you from emotional burnout. Instead of giving and giving until you feel empty, you create a steady rhythm of recharging. So when you do show up for others, you're present, balanced, and genuine. You're not giving out of obligation or exhaustion, but from a place of fullness. And that's what makes your love feel strong, stable, and real. The sixth habit: speak less, listen deliberately. INFJs have a strong desire to be understood. You feel things deeply, you think carefully, and when you finally express yourself, you want the other person to truly get it. Because of that, there's a tendency to over-explain. You might find yourself repeating the same point in different ways, adding more detail, or filling every silence just to make sure nothing is misunderstood. But in doing that, you often give away more energy than necessary, and sometimes your message actually loses its impact. The sixth Stoic habit shifts this completely. Instead of saying more, you learn to say less and listen with intention. This doesn't mean becoming quiet or distant. It means being deliberate with your words and comfortable with silence. There is a kind of strength in not rushing to explain yourself. When you pause instead of reacting, when you allow space instead of filling it, people start to feel that presence. It communicates confidence without needing to prove anything. Silence can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to maintaining the flow of every conversation. But silence is not a problem to fix. It's space for clarity. It gives both you and the other person time to think, to process, and to respond more honestly. When you stop over-explaining, you also stop over-giving. You're no longer trying to manage how the other person perceives you. You simply express what's true and let it stand. When you do speak, your words carry more weight. A clear, calm statement is far more powerful than a long explanation filled with justification. For example, instead of going into a detailed reason for why you need space, you might simply say, "I need some time to recharge." That's enough. The more grounded you are in your words, the less you feel the need to defend them. Quick pause. I'm curious. Which habit do you struggle with the most? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. Listening deliberately is just as important. Instead of thinking about what you'll say next, focus fully on what the other person is actually communicating. Not just their words, but their tone and intention. This helps you respond more accurately instead of reacting automatically. Over time, this habit changes the dynamic of your relationships. People begin to listen more carefully when you speak, because they know you're not speaking just to fill space. You're not chasing understanding anymore, you're expressing yourself with clarity and self-respect. And that shift creates a healthier balance, where your voice is heard without you having to overextend yourself. The seventh habit: honor kindness with discernment. Your kindness is one of your strongest and most defining qualities. You care deeply, you show up for people, and you often give without expecting anything in return. But when that kindness is given without limits or awareness, it can slowly turn into something that drains you. That's why the seventh habit is to pair your kindness with discernment. Not everyone who receives your empathy knows how to value it, and not everyone who needs support is in a place to grow from it. Being discerning doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means becoming aware of where your energy is going and whether it's being respected. A Stoic approach to kindness is not about giving endlessly. It's about giving wisely. You learn to notice who is genuinely trying, who takes responsibility for their life, and who simply relies on others to carry their emotional weight. Think of your empathy as something valuable, not something automatic. You're still going to support people you care about, especially when they're going through a real challenge. That's part of who you are. But there's an important difference between someone facing a difficult moment and someone who constantly creates chaos and expects you to clean it up. One is temporary and human. The other is a pattern. If you pay attention, you'll start to see those patterns clearly. Some people only reach out when they need something. Some repeat the same problems without making any effort to change. Some take your support for granted without ever checking in on you. These are the moments where discernment matters. You don't have to cut people off completely, but you can choose to step back, to limit how much energy you invest. This is not about punishing anyone. It's about protecting your capacity to care. When your energy is constantly being drained, your kindness starts to feel heavy instead of natural. You may even begin to feel resentment, which is a sign that something is out of balance. By being more selective, you give your empathy a chance to stay genuine. You create space for relationships where your kindness is appreciated and returned. You stop falling into the role of the constant rescuer and start becoming someone who supports without sacrificing themselves. In the end, true kindness is not about giving everything you have. It's about giving in a way that can last. When you honor your kindness with discernment, you protect both your heart and your ability to keep loving in a healthy, sustainable way. The 8th habit: assert your standards without apology. So many INFJ women hesitate when it comes to having clear standards. There's often this quiet fear in the background that if you ask for too much, expect too much, or hold firm on certain things, you might push people away. You might be seen as difficult, too intense, or hard to please. But that belief needs to be challenged. Habit number 8 is about asserting your standards without apology, and understanding that having standards is not selfish. It's one of the clearest forms of self-respect. Standards are not about controlling others. They are about defining what you will and will not accept in your life. Without them, you end up adjusting yourself to fit into situations that don't truly align with you. Over time, that creates frustration and emotional exhaustion because you're constantly compromising parts of yourself just to maintain connection. That's why it's important to make your standards clear, first to yourself. Take some time and write them down. What does a healthy, respectful relationship look like to you? Maybe it includes honesty, emotional availability, consistency, and mutual effort. Then go deeper. Identify your non-negotiables. These are the things you cannot overlook without betraying yourself, such as dishonesty, disrespect, or being consistently undervalued. Writing them down makes them real. It turns vague feelings into clear principles. Once you have that clarity, the next step is living by it. This is where it can feel uncomfortable. When a boundary is crossed or a non-negotiable is violated, you have to respond. Not with anger or aggression, but with calm certainty. Saying no or stepping back is not about punishing the other person. It's about protecting your own well-being. There will be moments where your fear of losing someone or being misunderstood tries to take over. But this is where your growth shows. You choose self-respect over approval. You remind yourself that the right people won't be pushed away by your standards, they will respect them. Each time you stand by what you believe is right for you, you strengthen your confidence. You start trusting yourself more, because your actions match your values. People begin to see that you're not someone who can be easily swayed or taken for granted. And most importantly, you send a message to yourself that your needs matter. You show that you would rather be alone than stay in a situation that compromises who you are. That level of self-respect doesn't push the right love away. It attracts it. The 9th habit: pursue independent fulfillment. The final, and maybe the most liberating habit of all, is learning to pursue your own independent fulfillment. As an INFJ, you naturally find meaning in connection. You care deeply, you invest emotionally, and when you love someone, you often want to support their growth, their happiness, and their healing. But if you're not careful, that energy can slowly turn into over-focus. Their life becomes your focus, their emotions become your responsibility, and without realizing it, you start placing your own needs on the back burner. This is where the Stoic principle of self-reliance becomes essential. Your purpose, your passions, and your personal growth cannot depend on another person. They have to stand on their own. When your sense of fulfillment is tied only to a relationship, it creates imbalance. You begin to seek stability and identity through someone else, and that can lead to emotional dependence, even if your intentions are pure. Instead, start building a life that feels meaningful to you, outside of any relationship. Think about what genuinely brings you a sense of satisfaction or excitement. It could be something creative like writing, painting, or designing. It could be a personal goal like improving your health or learning a new skill. It could even be something purposeful like volunteering or contributing to your community. The specific activity doesn't matter as much as the feeling it gives you, a sense of direction that belongs to you. When you invest time and energy into your own life, something important shifts. You stop looking at a relationship as the center of your world. Instead, it becomes a part of your world. You're no longer waiting for someone else to complete you or make you feel whole, because you've already started creating that wholeness for yourself. This changes the dynamic of how you love. You show up not from a place of need, but from a place of choice. You're there because you want to be, not because you feel like you have to be. That difference is powerful. It removes pressure, reduces emotional dependency, and creates a healthier balance between two people. Independent fulfillment also acts as a form of protection. If a relationship faces challenges or even ends, you don't lose your sense of self along with it. You still have your direction, your identity, and your sense of purpose intact. In the end, this habit allows you to love more freely. You're not trying to hold on to someone to feel complete. You're simply sharing your already meaningful life with another person. And that's what creates a strong, stable, and lasting connection. These 9 habits are your training for 2026. They're the tools you'll use to build that unbreakable shield. Don't try to master them all at once. Just pick one that really speaks to you and practice it this week. Maybe it's just pausing before you react. Maybe it's scheduling 20 minutes of alone time. This journey is about transforming your empathy from a source of pain into your greatest source of power. It's about learning to stand so grounded in your own worth that you can love deeply without losing yourself. You were not made to be an emotional caretaker for the world at your own expense. You were made to change it. And that change starts by protecting the beautiful, empathetic heart you were given. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content on navigating life as an empowered empath. Now I have a question for you. Which of these 9 habits do you feel you need the most right now? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This is a community of deep souls, and your story matters. You are not alone on this journey.